Hi guys, and welcome to the start of the next video. What I'm doing first is this SR20 Det engine. So this is like a Nissan 200 SX. It's 4-cylinder turbocharged. The reason I'm videoing this is because I've got to gap the piston rings for a customer. I did a piston ring video when we first started the channel, but I thought I would just do another one now just as a reminder. I've bought it, honed it, got it to size. I've still got to skim the block, but to skim the block I've got to bolt the new oil pump on because that's all got to be flat and parallel across the top there. Next thing I've got to do is the rings. So when you get the paperwork, you need to work out what application the engine is being used for. If it's turbocharged, how much boost you're going to run. And then this gives you a factor, a ring gap factor. So basically you times the finished bore by these factors here, and it will give you what ring gap they recommend you run. So on the top ring it's 23 thousandths of an inch, and on the second ring it's 24 thousandths. The oil gap, we calculate that as well, or the oil rail gap. But basically, if I show you ring by ring, this is the oil control ring, and then these are the two oil rail rings. I've already checked these, so I know that these don't need any adjustment, but to fit them, what's important is when you look at the ring, that the two ends don't overlap like this, that they butt up like that to each other. That's very, very important that you keep an eye on these. Now what I do, it doesn't matter if this goes this way or this way, but what I do is I always make sure that the two ends that meet always point up. And I do that just so I know that every engine, when I gap the rings, it's just always the same. So then I always put the opening part just off slightly to an angle from the center line of the gudgeon pin or the thrust faces. So we're like this, about 45 degrees or wherever you're measuring it from. And then with the oil rails, what I do is I just very carefully flick them in like that, and whichever way the ring rail points to, I have that pointing towards the oil control ring. So that there would be at the bottom, pointing to the control ring there. And then basically I just put that in there and carefully just roll it around, making sure I don't scratch the piston when I drag it in, and then sit that on the thrust face, or opposite the thrust face. Okay, so the second ring, so basically I want that way, so it pushes down, and then I'm going 180 degrees opposite where I fitted the first ring. So that's the oil control now on the piston. Now this is cylinder number 2. I'm making sure that I'm keeping the pistons in bore order. So if you see here, I've marked them 1, 2's over there, 3 and 4. I've already done the second rings on cylinders 1 and cylinders 4. And the next one is cylinder 2. So the next thing for me to do is to fit the second ring. I have actually resized this a little bit because I started to do this and then decided to record what I was doing. Hopefully this is at the right size. So now what I do is just really carefully get the ring in so it's at the top, and then I'll use a piston or something to make sure that I'm pushing the ring in really square and at the same point all the way down the bore, because if I push the ring in and it's sitting like that in the bore, it will actually open the gap up. It won't give a true measurement. So we've got to make sure that the piston ring is in the bore absolutely in the right position. Now we know, because we've worked out the size, that this has got to be 24 thousandths. So I've got the feeler gauges. I use snap-on feeler gauges. I find them really good. They do all different sorts, but this is a 35 piece just normal straight feeler gauge set. So I'm going to start a couple of thou smaller than what I want the finished size to be. So I'm on 22 thou now, which fits in, but I can feel it. So we'll try 23. It was at 20 earlier, so 23 goes in. So this is the finished size that we want, and I want to be able to feel it really kind of be dragging on the feeler gauges, just like that. So that's in the gap, and you can see that it's, the feeler gauge isn't falling out, so I know that the ring's got it nice and tight. So that one's done. So I really carefully just take the feeler gauge out, then just twist the ring and lift it out. And then I want to make sure that where I've gapped this ring, that there's no burr there. Now what's super important on these is, once you've gapped the rings, especially on the second ring, which is a ductile material, it does leave burrs, and you don't want a burr on the front face, what runs up and down the bore, because it will scratch the bore. But what you also don't want to do is you don't want to take like a really big file to this to get rid of the burr, because what you'd technically be doing then, although the gap will be right here, the actual part of the ring that runs up and down the bore will have a bigger gap there. So that's not what we want. We want to keep the deburring process as minor as possible. We just don't want to feel anything that can drag. So like I said, I've already done this one, so this one's good. So then what I'm going to do with the second ring and the top ring is fit them, but we want these to be fitted on the non-thrust side of the piston. So we definitely don't want it here or here. So the top and the second ring we fit against the gudgeon pin. Most rings are marked with a top, but if not, you can tell what they are because they'll have like a step or a chamfer. I'll go through those in a minute actually, what each one is. But this one, because this is a second ring, it has a slight step here, and that always points to the bottom, so it scrapes on the way down. So then very carefully we'll just fit the second ring, opening it up as we slide it around the piston, and that's that one done. So the next cylinder that I'm going to do is cylinder number 3. I'm going to check the oil ring gap first. I could do this visually because it is important, but it's not as important as the compression rings. You can get away with a bigger gap, but that looks about perfect. And then once again, this second ring, I haven't touched this cylinder yet, so I'm gonna fit it the right way up. Just use one of the already fitted piston rings and piston combination to slide that down, so I know that it's in the bore at the right height, or the same height all round. And then I'm going to start at 20 thou. Like I said before, this has got to be 24 thou, so I'm going to start at 20. 21. Yeah, you see 22 won't fit in there, can't get that in. So that's at 21 thou. So I need to open that up 3 thou. So to do that I'm using this is a total seal ring file. We put the ring in this part here and then make sure it's running true with the stone by bringing this part down and then making sure there's no, let me just get this further back. So making sure there's no gap, which we can just adjust like that. But if the ring feels like it gets, if the feeler gauge feels like it gets tighter as it goes further towards the bore, then we can just correct that by moving this ring on here slightly. And then I'm just going to use a torch just so I can cast a better light on it for me, getting it accurate like that. And then I've already preset this gauge here. I'll just move this back a bit more. I've already preset this gauge here to 0, so I know when I take 3 thou off it. And move that back. And very carefully just bring the ring onto the stone, and then basically we can look down the side once it's just started to make sure that we're machining flat on the ring. And then I want the finish on the ring really smooth, so on the final cut we just bring it away from the stone very, very gently, but then before it gets to the end just back the wheel off so it doesn't drag it across the sharp part of the stone. And then very carefully on this part of the ring file just deburr the flats. And I'm putting no pressure on that at all really, as you can hear. I'm just looking for it just to polish that edge off. Like that. And then the top. And then the part that runs up and down on the bore, I'll do that by hand with a really fine bit of emery. Making sure I keep the sanding action in the right direction, and then just clean up those 2 parts as well. And then back to the block. And starting off with 22. And it should be 24. And there we go. 24 thou. So I'm now going to put that onto number 3. Oh, I've got to do the oil rings first. So once again, the 2 open ends pointing upwards. and this one at 180 degrees opposite, and then the second ring at 90 from the thrust face, like that. And then the next thing to do is the top rings. So I've put 2 of the top rings in the bore in the same position or in the right height, and then these are a chrome ring with a taper on the back edge, and what that does is when it comes up on compression, it basically, the compression or part of the compression will come behind the ring and then push on the taper, and it pushes the ring into the bore to give it a better sealing action. So I'm going to just put cylinders 2 and 3 in there, and then just use one of the pistons to get them at the right height. Now I haven't, apart from fitting the pistons in bore 1 and bore 4, I haven't done anything yet on these. I've not measured them or anything. So we might as well start off on number 4. I can see straight away that the gap is way too small on that, because well, if I get a calculator, let me tell you what it is. So if this was a street engine, the bore size is 3.4055, times it by the multiplier, which is 0.0045. So if this was a street engine, the top ring gap would be 15 thou. But because this is in a turbo engine, the actual top ring gap is 23 thou. So these gaps on the top rings would be purposely from the piston manufacturer made small, so we can always resize them out bigger for turbo. That's why doing this is really important. I mean, these are a Wiseco piston, which the quality on these is really nice. They're good, they're well made piston, all individually balanced. And what is nice about this, when you get the paperwork, they kind of overload you with paperwork. They'll even explain good and bad ways of doing the rings, the piston ring position, where it should be. So if you're not used to doing this, you can see it all on here, and it says here the oil scraper end gaps must be installed between 15 and 50 thou. I've never noticed that before, to be honest. So everything is on the paperwork, just spelled out nice and simple to help non-engine builders build their own engines if they want to have a go at it. Right, so what we've got to do now is measure the top ring gap, and that looks quite small, so I'm going to start with an 11 thou. Oh, that was a good guess. It's 12 thou. So, and the other thing is, we've just measured this cylinder number 4 at 12 thou, but I'm not just going to assume that they're all set at 12 thou. We're going to measure cylinder by cylinder, and also because we want to get this to 23 thou, I'm not just going to take 11 thou off this, out of this ring gap straight away, because what I don't want to do is set it up parallel, but as the ring gap alters, it might alter the ring gap like parallel position to the bore. So I'm going to take 6 thou off it first, then come in and measure it and just make sure it all still looks at 90, the gap looks at 90 from the bore, and yeah, do it in bits and just make a better job of it. So once again, over to the ring file, and once again I'm keeping the piston ring in the right position, so there's a little N here, that is the top. Just get my torch on my phone to make sure. And then switch the file on. So this won't be at the right size yet because I've only taken, well, it was 7 thou that I took off it, so, but it was more to make sure that the gap is machined correctly. So I'm going to start over at 15 because we had a 12 thou gap and I've taken plenty out, but we'll start still below so we work our way up to it. And then you can see that I'm just making sure the feeler blade is clean every time I fit it. Okay, so what I can feel now is exactly what I thought. We're getting the feeler gauge halfway down the ring there. The actual part that's nearest the bore is tight. So it's 19 thou on the inner side of the bore, but 18 thou on the outer side of the bore. And that's basically because of where we've machined the ring. As the gap has opened out, it's just moved it away from 90. So we can correct this dead easy, but this is why I try and do it in stages and don't just try and get it right first go. So now I'm setting the ring up against the parallel stop, but I'm having it where I've got about a 1/1000th gap on the inner side of the ring, so I can correct where it's not quite perfect. And before I get to the end, I'm going to release it away from the edge of the stone. And then the other thing that I do is I check to make sure there's no grinding marks left, no rough horrible file marks left on that ring. We don't want that. And then a very slight deburt on the top and bottom. And then very gently it's perfect. So we'll give it another measure. Hopefully it's right this time. Use the piston to get it at the right height, very carefully. And what we're after is 23 thou. That's 22 thou, so we need another thou out of that. No, it's recording. And that's it, 23 thou is now in there nice. So we're going to fit that onto piston number 4. Once again 180 degrees from the second ring, making sure the end is pointing upwards. Very carefully just roll it around the piston. perfect. So what I'm going to do now is do the other 3 top rings, put the piston back exactly how it was packaged when they was bought here. So we just put the 1 pack of circlips back in, put the gudgeon pack in, gudgeon pin, sorry, back in. Put it back into my customer's box. The water pipe I've had to take out because we're going to reface this block. So I'll put that in there, and then I'll get on with these other 3, and then I'll show you the differences in the rings afterwards, and then show you how we skim this. But that's the way I do piston rings, and yeah, it works all right for me. We don't seem to really have any issues with rings, so I hope that's been helpful, and I'll show you some more bits on this engine in a minute. I'm going to get this GoPro battery on charge because we're quite low. Right, this job that's come in is for a local guy that works around at the Mercedes dealership, and he's put in these twin, what are they, 45s? Yeah, twin 45s onto his 190 Mercedes, an old school Mercedes, but he's got some problems with everything matching up. I mean, I don't know if you can see down there, but the inlet manifold is way too big for the carburetors, so we're going to struggle to do anything with that, to be fair. But also the inlet manifold doesn't match up to the cylinder head very well, so we've got to do some port work on that to get it all to blend in. So I'm going to get it stripped first. I'm going to take all the sensors out so I don't break any of them. I'm going to take the carburetors off the inlet manifold, and then bolt the inlet manifold to the cylinder head, and then start to make a plan of how I'm going to port it and make it all fit and work. So I've stripped the valves, the inlet valves, out of this cylinder head and I've taken the carburetors off the inlet manifold. Now I think this inlet manifold is for either 48s or throttle body kit, because the other thing that he did, or not he did, but what was supplied to him, was there was no Doughty seals and proper rubber spacers on the carburetors, because when you run carburetors, basically you should be able to get them and move them. If you ever bolt things up solid, that's more for fuel injection, but this is his problem. So not that I think this is actually the right thing to do, because I think basically he should look at changing the inlet manifold for one more suited, but what he wants me to do is basically to blend this in. But I don't want to open the port out because I don't want to kill the airspeed in the port. So what I'm going to do is just try and blend it as best as I can so it hasn't got so much of a big step in there. I have said to him that I think he should look for another inlet manifold, but he said that he just can't and he wants to try this. So yeah, I've given him what I think is the best advice about not doing it this way, but he wants me to gas flow the cylinder head to match the inlet manifold up. But that's what we're up against, and I'll show you the finished article. The Mercedes cylinder head is now port matched. So what I've done is I've taken the inlet valves out and then taken it over to the gas flowing bench, and then basically blended the port to the inlet manifold. My customer didn't want this actually fully gas flowing, he just wanted to lose that massive step that we showed earlier. That would have interrupted with the airflow massively. So I've gone and basically marked it out on the cylinder head, then with a cutting burr or a heavy cut burr, took it to virtually the size, then put a smooth burr in to finish it, and then basically blended it in with the cartridge rolls to finish it off, and then made sure there's no steps there, just tidied up around the guide and around the guide boss. So that's that done. The other thing that I noticed is I think this inlet manifold that he's bought for it was for throttle bodies, because it come with these spacer gaskets before, which I think these would have run a paper gasket each side, and on fuel injection these are fine, but he's running 45 DCOEs, a pair of them, and these should be rubber mounted. So I've ordered up some misab plates for him, which are rubber mounted each side, or there's a rubber O-ring each side with a gasket in the middle. So these would sit like that, and also they are 445. So if I just put this camera down, I can show you. So these gaskets that were supplied, compared to the actual proper misab plate for a 45, these are quite a lot smaller, so I don't think these would have been any good anyway unless we would machine these out as well. So we've got the misab plates on, so they would sit like that, all four of them. Then the carb would sit on there. Bearing in mind this is actually the wrong side, this carburettor would normally sit there because the linkage is in the middle. I'm only just doing this to show you how this bolts together. And then basically it runs, each one of these studs would run a 3-piece washer and rubber setup. So it runs a top hat washer on the bottom, then a rubber, and then a top hat washer on the top with the nut. He is going to have to change these studs because these aren't long enough for this setup. But what will happen then is you tighten these washers up until there's roughly about that much of a gap on the wash, in between the washer and the rubber, or in between the two washers. That way, when the car's running and ticking over, all that rubber takes any sort of hard bolted together vibration out of the DCOE. It can just allow it to move slightly. So all DCOEs and DHLA Delautos should run a setup like that. But the valves are back in, it's been through the wash, so that's that job done, and now we're going to move on to something else. I've been doing a BMW M3 cylinder head and bottom end for a customer, and this is the cylinder head, which is in for a reface and seats cut. It also needed 4 valves because it's had something detonate away in here, and it's bent a couple of valves. There's some bits below this pen that we've put on. I've covered it in pen because it's quite well warped, so I thought I would show how bad it was. So that is the BMW M3 cylinder head skimmed. It was really badly warped. I don't know how well the GoPro has picked up the footage of it, but I haven't seen one like that for a long time really. Next job for this is for me to cut the seats, then give it a wash. While I'm doing that, Sam has been getting the Euro car out and ready to put in the back of the as you can see, there's a gap or space. These are the cupboards that we got off someone for upstairs in the office, and yeah, Sam has on Graves. Just bear me a sec, I'll just do this. So the Euro car's back in the lorry. The lorry we got back the other week from having a new airbag fitted and it going through its MOT. It was meant to be being painted, but the guy, we tried to get hold of the guy a few times to arrange getting it up to him, and he never answered the phone or called me back, so I don't think we're going to have time to get that painted now. But we needed to make a bit of a space in here because where the Euro car's been basically there, we've not been able to do anything on the pickup, and we've got furniture for the office and wood and plasterboard everywhere. We've got the Pro 2 engine back off Russell, so that's the one that Russell used to finish the season on. We've got another Duratec in for just checking over, ready for the season. And yeah, that's where we're at the moment. So next job is to get on with this M3 cylinder head. I'll get the seats cut on that. I've been cutting the inlet seats on the BMW M3 engine, and then I've just spun the head over to do the exhaust seats, and noticed that with the new BMW valve in there that there's just too much play. So big thanks to Simon at Nevlock Engine Components. He sent me out 12 guides straight away to fit. So we're going to stick that on the Carmack, press the old guides out and then press the new guides in, and then hone them to size so we ain't got that play in there, and then I'll cut all the exhaust seats. So the first thing to do is to mount it on here, get the angle right, and let's get the first set of guides pressed out. So the first thing for me to do is to get the head level. So for that I just use a little spirit bubble. I put a valve in, put that on the valve, undo the clamps that hold the machine still, and then just wind the head until I've got the spirit level bubble in the centre, and then lock the machine off both ends and then start to press the valve guides out. So this head needs moving up a little bit, so I'll just move these stops up so the head is sitting a bit higher, and then I always start with the bottom anchor on the machine first, just so I know that I'm pressing against something solid. So I just lift that up until I see the head move, then I know that I'm pressing against the cylinder head. and change that, bring this top part of the machine down, keep an eye on it to make sure it goes in the centre of the guide like that, and that's it, nice and easy. Well, I've got a bit of clearance, move that one down a little bit. This machine really does make this job a lot more pleasant than trying to do it with a hammer and a guide punch. What I've also done is I've measured from the back of the guide. On the back of the guide, I've measured from the valve spring seat platform up to the top where the stem seal goes, so I can make sure that they all go back in exactly the same place. That's all the seats now cut on the M3 with the new exhaust guides in, so this is final wash time for this, and then I can put new stem seals on it and assemble it ready for my customer. That's the BM out of the wash, and the seats look really nice actually. So I've done 3 angle on the exhaust and 3 angle on the inlet. This is the cylinder that had some damage. Most of that's gone now. I'm just going to take that little burr off there. I've got to reface the other valves, so I'll do that next. I'm not going to film that because we've filmed that quite a lot recently. And then assemble this cylinder head, and then the only thing I've got left to do is vac test it once the valves are in. And on the block, which I'll show you, so the block just come in for crankshaft polish, new rings, hone, block skim. We've given it a coat of paint just to make it look nice, and then it had some damage on this piston which he didn't want replacing, so I've took all the burrs out of it, polished it as best as I can get it. That's all together now, so all I've got to do to that is put the bore squirters in it and just fit the rear oil seal housing, bag it up, and then it's ready for my customer to have back. So that's the BMW cylinder head all washed and back together. We've got 4 new valves in there, all the seats are cut, the other valves have been refaced. We just turn it over quick. So that's a nice diamond finish on that. I think it had about 14 thou off this cylinder head to get it right. Brand new BMW valves. I've had to put new exhaust guides in, obviously you see the video for that. And then the bottom end's all back together. I've just bolted in the bore squirters which are down there just to cool the piston and lubricate the bottom of the bore slightly. I put ARP big M bolts in this with standard main cap bolts, ACL bearings throughout. The customer supplied the big ends actually. I've penned it all up, so that's all ready to go. The crankshaft's been polished. We gave it a little coat of paint just to make it look a bit better. So I've honed the bores, give it a really light reface across the top just to get that back. New piston rings. But that's it guys, I'm now on with finishing House's Vauxhall engine, which is over there. I've got this Cosy engine in to put back together, but we need a list of parts for that. This is House's engine, that's going back together. Russell's is going back together. And there's a few others in here that have been happening for a little bit of time now, but they all seem to be flying together now. So thanks for viewing guys. If you've been watching and you haven't subscribed, if you could please, it would mean a lot to us. We're trying to get the subscribers up, and if you could give us a thumbs up, that would be mega too. We're all steam ahead on the race car at the moment because the season starts in about 6 weeks. So we're trying to get, I think we've got 6 engines to get ready for the pickups. We're not touching mine. Mine was pretty good at the end of the year. And that's it. We've got 1, 2, 3, I think 3 or 4 Duratec's to do. Well, one of them went back, so we've got 3 Duratec's to do. And then there's 2, 3 Vauxhalls to finish as well, but we'll get them done, that'll be all right. Plus, we're building a spare as well to have there in case anyone has a problem. And that's it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next video. Ta-ra.